Have you ever stopped to think about what really happens when you stop responding? Not with words, but with your presence. When you stop being available, when you withdraw not out of weakness but out of decision, something breaks in the world around you. The gears that turned with your energy begin to creak. People who fed off your automatic yes begin to squirm in the discomfort of your silent no. And that's when you begin to realize your absence can be more powerful than any forced presence. We live in a world where emotional availability has become a bargaining chip. You are valued for how much you respond, how much you please, how much you give in. From an early age, we were taught that being always present, ready, willing is a virtue. But what if I told you that this constant presence is actually a trap in disguise? A psychological prison where your energy drains away drop by drop, while others drink from your source without ever asking if you are still thirsty. Carl Jung, the master of inner shadows, said that everything that irritates us in others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves. And this video delves into that mirror. Today, you'll discover what really happens when you withdraw. You'll understand how silence, when chosen consciously, is not absence, it's sovereignty. You'll see how becoming emotionally unavailable can be the first step to reclaiming your energy, your identity, your peace. This is not a video about running away. It's a call to come back to center, to stop being shaped by other people's expectations and start building yourself from within. If you feel like your energy is being drained, if you're tired of giving without getting anything in return, this is the turning point. From now on, you'll learn the power behind becoming unavailable and why it can be the greatest act of self-love you've ever done. True power rarely presents itself with fanfare. It does not shout. It does not impose itself through visible force. It settles in silence, and when perceived, it has already transformed everything. For millennia, different spiritual, philosophical, and esoteric traditions have understood something that only recently has modern psychology begun to investigate: the energetic impact of presence. The invisible power of those who know themselves well enough to choose when to withdraw, when not to explain, when not to react. In ancient Egypt, initiates of the school of Maat learned about the weight of the soul, not as a moralistic metaphor, but as a vibrational measure. Talking too much, exposing oneself without wisdom, reacting impulsively, all of this was seen as energetic dispersion. Silence, on the other hand, was cultivated as alchemy. Those who remain in deep observation transform the world around them without moving a single piece. It was in the mastery over one's own response that true influence was born. Jewish mystics, in their Kabbalah manuscripts, also spoke of the divine withdrawal, the moment when God steps aside to allow man to manifest himself. This concept, known as Tzimtzum, reveals a powerful idea. The space left by silence is the womb where transformation is born. Withdrawal, in this sense, is a creative act, an advanced form of spiritual intelligence. The East also offers us echoes of this same truth. In Buddhist sutras, the Buddha often responded to chaos with silence, but this silence was not empty. It was charged with presence, as if in that gesture of not saying anything, he said everything. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu warned that the deepest river is the one that flows in silence, and the wisest ruler is the one who leads without being noticed. Being present without offering oneself as a constant stimulus was the greatest of refinements. In Western philosophy, Nietzsche did not speak to those who sought comfort. He spoke to those who were ready to destroy their old identity. When he introduced the concept of the Übermensch, the Beyondman, he described someone who transcends collective morality, someone who does not live in reaction to the world, but in the silent creation of a new being. For Nietzsche, reacting was proof of weakness. True mastery came from restraint, from a steady gaze, from the silence that unsettles more than 1,000 words. Carl Jung, deeply influenced by these ideas, described the process of individuation as a solitary and courageous journey where the individual must disidentify from his mask, the persona, in order to finally know the self. And this process doesn't happen in noise. It happens in seclusion, in the discomfort of silence, in the absence of the distractions that normally keep us stuck in the old version of ourselves. These ancient and modern masters understood something that few today allow themselves to experience. Becoming emotionally inaccessible, even temporarily, is a healing gesture. It is the beginning of a reintegration, a way to deprogram the triggers that make us predictable, manipulable, drainable. It is also a political act, a silent challenge to the system that profits from your constant exposure, your need for acceptance, your fear of being alone. Because those who master the art of retreat do not run away from the world. They recreate it around them. Think of yourself as an energetic architecture, a field of pulses, frequencies, and patterns. Every reaction you have, every impulse that explodes without filter, every explanation offered without being asked, functions like a switch. And that switch, once turned on, connects you directly to the emotional dynamics of the other. That's when you lose sovereignty over yourself. The question is no longer who you are, but how much of you is being controlled by external forces that you don't even realize. When we talk about the decision to become emotionally inaccessible, we're not advocating coldness, isolation, or emotional detachment. We're talking about energetic intelligence, about mastery, about knowing that the real focus isn't in reacting to the world, it's in influencing it effortlessly. And that can only be achieved when you stop being predictable. The problem is that most people are operating in a state of social hypnosis. They react like puppets to old stimuli, unresolved traumas, unconscious repetitions. One misplaced word and there you are, inflamed. A sideways glance and your mind is already building an attack scenario. This reactive pattern is so common that it goes unnoticed. But what is at stake here is your psychic freedom. Carl Jung said that what we do not face within ourselves ends up manifesting itself as destiny. And what he meant is that until you control your reactions, you will continue to be a toy in the hands of those who understand your wounds. Yes, those who control your emotional button control you completely. Imagine yourself as a castle. Every time you react without thinking, it is like opening the gates to any visitor, even those who want to plunder you. By making yourself inaccessible, you are not closing the gates. You are choosing who is allowed to enter. You are saying, my energy is not a public good. And that is when the game begins to change. Because the emotional manipulator, the one who survives on your guilt, on your urgency to explain and justify yourself, loses his nourishment. He provokes you, expecting the old script, drama, defense, exhaustion, but receives only silence. And in this silence, he begins to hear what he never wanted to. His own neediness, his own emptiness, his own inability to sustain himself without using you as a crutch. Intentional emotional inaccessibility is a vibrational field. It is not absence. It is refined presence. It is the space between stimulus and response. It is there, in this invisible interval, that freedom resides. Most people live on autopilot. You now begin to live in control. But there is an even deeper point. When you stop reacting, you reveal yourself. For the first time, you begin to see clearly which situations, people, and contexts unbalance you, and why. Your reactivity was like a fog, preventing you from seeing. Restraint, on the other hand, clears the scene. It shows who is with you and who is only there as long as you remain available to supply what is missing in them. So it is not about being silent out of fear. It is about being silent out of wisdom. It is not about disappearing from the world. It's about finally showing up for yourself. When you decide to become selective with your energy, an invisible change begins to happen around you. People feel it. The environment feels it, because your frequency changes. You stop being an easy-to-decipher surface and become a field of mystery. And mystery in itself is magnetic. But it is also challenging for those who were used to accessing their emotions easily, like someone typing a password repeated 1,000 times. This change creates a vacuum, and where there is a vacuum, there is revelation. People who seemed like allies but fed off your energy begin to distance themselves, not by conscious choice, but because they no longer find resonance with you. The manipulator needs reactivity, and your absence leaves them disoriented. They try to force the old pattern. They provoke you, they poke you, they try to bring out the old version. But something has changed. You don't respond, you just observe. This conscious silence, this calculated distancing, is not apathy. It is psychic alchemy. Because by refusing to play the game of reactivity, you break the mirrors that others used to see only the reflection that interested them. And when the mirror breaks, they are forced to look directly at themselves. And almost no one is ready for that. There is a symbolic passage in the Hermetic traditions that says, "He who knows himself is no longer a mirror, he is the sun." The mirror reflects the other, but the sun illuminates everything around with its own essence. This is the transition that occurs when you leave the sphere of automatic emotional availability for the sphere of silent presence. You do not become less visible. You become undeniable. But be careful. With this transformation will come tests. The universe will test your steadfastness in the face of old patterns. Old relationships will try to get closer. Situations that used to break you will knock on your door with new masks. And it is at this moment that your new posture will be tested. Because it is easy to remain strong in isolation. The real challenge is to sustain your new frequency in the midst of chaos. You will notice something curious. The more you maintain your presence without justifying yourself, without giving in, the more the masks around you begin to fall. People don't know how to act in front of someone who doesn't need to defend themselves. Because in a culture where everyone is desperate to be understood, to be accepted, to belong, true strength lies in those who have already accepted themselves completely. Carl Jung said that individuation, the process of becoming who we really are, requires a withdrawal, a disconnection from the expectations of the collective. And this withdrawal often manifests itself first in the refusal to participate in empty dynamics. When you stop giving what you once offered without awareness, your time, your attention, your presence, you begin to create a new, almost sacred field around you. A field that is not inhabited by just anyone, but only by those who vibrate in the same truth. And here lies the most sublime irony. the more you make yourself inaccessible by choice, the more you begin to attract what truly has value. Because the world, deep down, doesn't respect what is always given. He respects what is kept with purpose. Applying this awareness to your daily life requires more than inspiration. It requires training. A kind of silent re-education in which you begin to shape your psychic field with intention. And the first practice begins the moment you feel the urge to react. Breathe. Don't respond. Observe. This microspace between stimulus and response is where true power begins to manifest. The old you would act on impulse. The new you chooses when and how to act. And often you choose not to act, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. The second exercise is that of conscious refusal. Every day, you will be invited to participate in empty conversations, useless conflicts, and situations that drain your energy. In the face of this, say to yourself, I choose not to enter. And if possible, verbalize. Not now. You don't need to justify yourself. This simple act begins to reprogram your mind to stop seeking automatic approval and start being guided by inner sovereignty. Third, cultivate the ritual of deliberate silence. Set aside at least 15 minutes of your day for non-doing. This is not formal meditation. It is presence. Sit down. Be silent. Breathe. Observe the internal noises. This space will be uncomfortable at first. Your mind will ask for distraction. But little by little, what seemed like a void will reveal itself as a source. Ideas will come. Answers will come. And most importantly, clarity about who you really are without external voices. Another powerful practice is to write, but not for the world. Write for yourself. After a moment of disconnection or provocation, write down, why did this affect me? What inside me was touched? Over time, you will see that the people and situations that irritate you the most are the ones that most reveal where your energy still escapes. And once you identify the escape point, you can seal it. Finally, train your eye as an observer. In social settings, in meetings, in conflicts, be the one who sees beyond the words. Notice the emotional patterns, the subtle manipulations, the camouflaged needs. This will give you a silent power, because the one who observes without getting lost in the scene is the one who really writes the script. These practices are not complex, but they require presence, patience, and purpose. And over time, they become an invisible shield, a field that protects your peace and makes your absence more powerful than any words. We have reached the point where many voices are silent, but the real work is only just beginning. Because understanding all this intellectually is easy. The hard part is staying true to that awareness when the world tries, every day, to pull you back into your previous programming. You have heard, you have felt, maybe even seen parts of yourself that were dormant. But now comes the test. What are you going to do with this awakening? Being less available is more than an act of protection. It is a statement, a break with the idea that your worth depends on the approval of others. From now on, every time you choose to be silent, every time you say no without guilt, every time you step away to preserve your energy, you are not losing yourself. You are revealing yourself. Carl Jung knew that individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, requires crossing the desert. It requires losing familiar faces, challenging ingrained patterns, and letting go of versions of yourself that were created only to survive. But when you survive silence, rejection, discomfort, you become indomitable. Because only those who have faced their own absence without falling apart learn to live their own presence with integrity. And make no mistake, some people will walk away, Some connections will fall apart. But what remains after this purging is gold. Real relationships, true presence, preserved energy. You stop being a spectator of your own life and become an author. So, if this message touched something inside you, don't let it die on the screen. Comment below, "I choose my conscious silence," because sometimes writing is the first act of anchoring a decision, and that decision can change everything. The world is already too noisy. What it needs now are people who know when to speak and when to just be. Because in the end, the silence of those who know themselves echoes louder than the screams of 1,000 who have still lost themselves.